Ryan, when you watch back over how Julian performed on Saturday, what were your takeaways? Did he grade out as a champion, and what did you learn about him in his first start?
Yeah, he did. He graded out over 80%. His adjusted completion percentage with a few drops was pretty good. So we felt like he took care of the ball, made some good throws. I'd like to think that if we had made a few plays for him earlier on in the game, maybe it would have gone a different direction. But I don't think he ever flinched. So good start. A lot of football to go, though.
We'll go in the front row, Dave Biddle.
We were so busy asking you about quarterback battle and everything else. I don't think we asked you enough about the running back situation. Obviously, both CJ and James were going to play. You talked about that, but I thought James would be the starter and CJ would be the backup. What did CJ do to kind of earn that starting job?
Yeah, no, they're working together, and we're going to need them both, just like last year, and so we'll continue to do that, and I think James had 10 carries, and CJ, I'm not if he had more than that, but I mean we're gonna break it up and kind of let Locke roll those guys, but you could probably see James get more carries this week, and then maybe CJ more the next week. That's just kind of how it goes. And it was the same way with with Travion and Quinshon last year, and I think I looked, I think Travion only carried the ball more than 10 times, like twice last year. So, we got a long way to go, and we're gonna need all these guys.
Going to back, Dan Holt, 11 Warriors.
Yeah, Kenyatta left the game on Saturday. Any update on his health going into this week?
Yeah, no, real update other than he is working towards getting back to play this game.
Going to the front row, Austin Ward.
I know that you never want to disrespect any opponents, but with Texas now in the past, it seemed like training camp was all designed towards winning an opener. With what you have with the next two opponents and then the off week, is there any way that you may or may not tweak practices to treat this like training camp, rotate games? How does this schedule and the way week one went for you change the next couple of weeks at all?
Yeah, well, I think to your point, that was the focus, and now we got to grow. We got a lot of work to do, a ton. After you come down from the emotion of the game, you get back on the film and you get to work, you just realize that there's so many things that we got to improve on, and that's what the focus is going to be, regardless of the opponent. And you're going to hear the coach speak of it always is about us, but that is true. I mean, we're holding ourselves to a high standard. I think coming out of the game, we were able to build some confidence, and I think we're able to build some confidence moving forward with some guys who hadn't played a whole bunch of football. Looking back on last year's team, that starting 22, I think, had almost 700 total starts under their belt. And so when you have a bunch of guys coming in who don't have that same experience, it's different. And so I think coming out of that game, they realize they can play with anybody in the country. That being said, it is a long season. There are so many corrections that need to be made. There's a lot of improvements that have to happen in all three phases. And so, that's going to be the thing as we get back to work here. We got a team meeting at 2:30. We're going to get into our game week routine because leading up to the first game typically isn't always like a game week routine. So a lot of things to work on. And again, when you have guys who are a little bit more inexperienced, who haven't done it before, now, okay, we've won a game, but now we have to get in a routine and start bringing it every week and the consistency of what comes with that. Because again, our goal is to play all the way through January.
Second row, middle, Bill Landis.
Ryan, the first fourth down play where Julian threw it to Max and Max dropped it, Jeremiah was open. It seemed like he had three guys open on that play, and then you talked with him a little bit after that play. I'm just curious about like the feedback you got from Julian on that play and throughout the game, and what you thought of like what he was seeing and what you were seeing.
Yeah, I thought the design was right there. I think what you want to do with a young quarterback, sort of in his first start and his first big spot right there on fourth down, is what'd you see? And he said he felt the backside safety sort of running to the middle of the field. Back on film, you see him sort of running over the top on Max. Made a ton of sense to me. The fact that he thought he was running to the middle of the field in a single high look. And then, he got his feet, quickened up his feet, and put the ball on Max. It was towards the sideline, so maybe we would have liked it a little bit sooner. He was really selling the action, you could tell. So maybe, had another step or two in the fake that he could have snapped around a little bit faster, which would allow him maybe to see it a little better. But I thought he threw a heck of a ball. I mean, this is his first start ever. We got to help him out. And it's good to see he and Max connect on a pass later on. But but it was a good route by Max. Jeremiah was flying. I thought the design was right, and we're trying to be aggressive early in the game. And you hit that, who knows what happens? But that's a game of football. You got to move on, which I thought we did, and he did. But when you ask him, what did you see, and you get something that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're looking at the iPad, that helps. I do think for a young quarterback, having that iPad and actually watching the film on what you actually saw and then comparing it to what was on the film does confirm some things in your mind where in the past, you wouldn't know what that looked like until you actually got on the film the next day or after the game. So I think we use that to our advantage in this game.
You used the word with Brian after the game about his play calling that it was unselfish. As a coach, when do you kind of notice that in your career you learn to coach unselfish? And how important is it to realize that you may not be able to dictate a game and that you used the mantra just win last week? Like, we may have to get away from our game plan and 14 might have to be enough.
Yeah, I can't sit up and say to you guys that the number one goal is to just win. If it's 14-7, we have to be really, really excited about that. I think, in college football and before there was the playoff system, but even still now, and just being, at a place like Ohio State, there's certain things that, there's quote unquote, the look test and style points, which is a pretty dangerous place to go sometimes because the number one goal is to win. And if you get too worried about that, that can cost you a game. And so, especially in a game like this, the number one thing was to win the game. We wanted to establish an identity in terms of playing physical. I think you saw that. I think guys played hard in this game. I thought there was a physicality to the game. The execution's got to improve. We need to be more explosive on offense for sure. And I think you have to try to identify in the game what you're dealing with, and I think that for me is important. I do think the last drive when it was 14-7. I do think at that point, we need to be a little bit more aggressive right there. That first run didn't quite hit right, and then, they played man on second down and kind of hemmed us up, and then we're in third and long, which is bad, especially with an incompletion right there. So, I liked everything we did. I'm a part of that, so I'm being self-critical. That last drive, we got to go win the game in that moment. That being said, you got a young quarterback, so you got to keep all those things in mind, but at the end of the day, you just got to win the game and then move on and grow from there. But we know where we need to go, what we need to do, and so that's where we're going to work today.
Fourth row middle, Patrick Murphy.
Ryan, you talked before the game about how many times you sort of envisioned this game in your mind. How much did it play out like you thought, and how much maybe does what you thought before the game sort of dictate what you did during the game, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think if we felt like we were getting off the field on defense and playing good defensively, we wanted to limit the possessions that they had, which I think we did. Certainly that long drive, we ate 8 minutes off the clock. They used to say that like time of possession is one of the most overrated statistics. So not really, not when you're in a game like that and you're trying to keep a really good offense off the field and really good players. Once you get into halftime, that's kind of when you start to figure out, all right, where are we? We're up by 7. We feel like we're playing good on defense. We are getting some movement, up front. We're playing physical on offense. At some point we're gonna have to take a shot or two, and then see what happens there in the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. Didn't like the way we played in the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. We can do better there. There's a lot of things that we can execute better. And if we do, again, the game can change real fast. I thought we won. We talk about the middle 8. We won those first 4 minutes, but we didn't win those second 4 minutes. So we deferred, and we got the ball to start the second half, and I thought we could have done better there. So going back through the film, a lot of corrections we need to make to get better. And again, that's all great lessons to learn coming out of a win against an opponent like that. But nonetheless, the issues are still there.
Go to the left, Joe Nugent.
On the touchdown pass, what did you make of the effort by Will Kazmarek? It looked like he had his hands full, but certainly got the job done.
Yeah, that wasn't the only play that he had where he was playing really physical in this game. Will has really established himself as a really strong in line on the ball tight end. And you've seen him make some plays down the field, catching the ball. And so that room is strong. You can see we played with multiple tight ends in this game. And you know, whether it's he or Bennett Christian or Jelani Thurman, Max Clare, Nate Roberts, you know, we feel like we have some guys that, you know, we can build some different groupings out of. And that gives us a little bit of a change up there. So, but yeah, the strain on that play by a bunch of guys was critical. The guys up front, Will in particular, and then just Carnell coming back. And we talk a lot about those deep balls and the type of receivers we have is, you know, the more air you put on the ball, the more margin of error you allow the receiver to come back and make a play or get a PI. When you throw a flat ball there, you got to be on the money, and, you know, you got to be exact. And, you know, when we're in those one-on-one situations, we've got to give our guys a chance. So we got to put air on it. We got to give them a chance to go get it. You know, feel free to get out in front of them, make a great ball. But if you do and you miss a little bit underneath, these guys have a chance to make a play. It's exactly what happened. And, you know, for Carnell to make that spot in that moment was big for us, and certainly allowed us to go up by 2 scores and give us a little bit of room in the game.
Ryan, you've talked a lot in the last month and a half about identity of this team, and I wonder if the Texas game is such an anomaly because of the long lead-in time and what comes after it. Do you feel any closer to knowing what the identity of this team is?
Yeah, I think the first thing is what we talked about in preseason was the competitiveness, the grittiness. I think you saw that on Saturday, the way that our guys competed. I thought the way that we fought in the trenches. I thought the way that we tackled. I thought the way we blocked. I thought the way we ran. You could see all that, and that's a great start. Was it all perfect? No. Do we need to play even harder? Yes. The execution, the details, the fundamentals, like we got miles to go. It's not going to be good enough to where we need to go. But that's certainly something to build off of. And if that's going to be our identity, then we're going to have a chance.
Were you surprised by the defensive execution as clean? I mean, from our vantage point, it was pretty clean for a season opener. Was it installing a new defense coordinator, all the other changes? Was that a surprise to you?
Well, I think it was a very well thought out plan, but you know, these weren't all of a sudden brand new coverages. Only so many coverages you can play. You know, you can play 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's only a few of them. And when you're talking about great coaches like Tim Walton, Matt Guerreri, James Laurinaitis, Larry Johnson, I mean, these guys know our players and they know how to coach. So, you know, when Matt comes in and kind of, you know, has some wrinkles and different thoughts on how we want to attack it, they all work together in there. Now, that sounds great, but the players have to go put it on the field. And I think that's where the credit really needs to go. I mean, certainly it was a great plan, and you got to give our coaches a lot of credit, but you know, to see a guy like Jermaine Matthews, and, you know, he was all over the ball, you know.